The other day, I was kind of just mindlessly doom scrolling on YouTube when I came across a really interesting documentary on a place called Kowloon, the Walled City. This was an infamous and very real place in China that no longer exists today, as the Chinese government decided to completely demolish it in the early 90s. Nonetheless, the documentary mentioned possibly one of the most iconic action movies of all time, Bloodsport. A lot of you have probably already seen this movie, or at the very least you've heard about it, as it has many sequels, and it even inspired the character Johnny Cage in the Mortal Kombat series. And seeing that the entire movie is free to watch here on YouTube, I decided to give it a watch. That way I can answer the question, was it worth watching? Let's get into it. So right off the bat, we're introduced to our boy Jean-Claude Van Damme's character, who plays a U.S. Army captain by the name of Frank Dukes. And interestingly enough, apparently this is based on a real-life person named Frank Dukes, and basically kind of loosely inspired by real events in his life, which is a story in and of itself, but in a nutshell, that guy is full. Early in the movie, we get some background on Frank Dukes' character, and when he was a young boy, he broke into a gentleman's house with some of his friends, and they decided to steal some stuff, and in his house, they find a katana, and this is at the height of the ninja craze, so it's like, mid-80s when like America was obsessed with like ninjas and ninja arts and ninjutsus and, learning jutsus, basically. Anyway, a young Frank Dukes breaks into his soon-to-be master's house. His name is Senzo Tanaka. Frank Dukes and some of his friends break into Tanaka's home and they try to steal his katana. Senzo Tanaka hears them, of course, and he comes out to kind of stop them and he takes the katana back. Frank Dukes, however, stays behind. Tanaka uses his katana to actually cut the bill of his hat off, which is super scary, I'm not gonna lie, but a young Frank Dukes doesn't even flinch. This kind of impresses Tanaka, who says, you know what, I'm impressed you didn't flinch, you have a warrior spirit, and he decides, you know what, I'm gonna train you alongside my son, Shingo. So it's pretty cool. We don't see much of Shingo, but we see that they become friends at school, and, there's that. A little bit later, we find that Shingo, Tanaka's son, has actually died, so, it's a very sad moment. Tanaka's pretty upset, and he's distraught, and for a moment, he decides he's no longer going to train anybody, as, this was a pretty devastating blow to him. However, after a change of heart, he decides to train Frank Dukes, and, kind of let him inherit his will, and, basically become a member of the Tanaka clan. We get a really cool montage, and I do love me a good montage. We get a really cool training montage of Tanaka training Frank, and it's pretty impressive stuff. He trains him to do things blindfolded, he trains his flexibility and his strength, basically trains him and teaches him everything he knows, which is really cool. A now adult Frank Dukes is invited to the Kumite, which is an illegal martial arts tournament that is being held in Hong Kong. This invitation is actually meant for the Tanaka clan, but seeing as how Shingo is, no longer with us, instead Frank Dukes takes the invitation. As he's in the army, he decides to just go absent without leave, or AWOL, so he just kind of dips out and decides, you know what, I'm going to go fight in the Kumite because I want to bring Tanaka, his master, honor. We see that an older Tanaka is now sick and doesn't look like he has much time left, so Frank decides he's going to win the Kumite, that way he can bring honor to his teacher and to his ninja clan. It's very cool stuff, as he will soon be the last surviving member of his ninja clan. It's insanely cool. As he goes absent without leave, we see that two military police officers are assigned to track him down in Hong Kong, and these characters are not important, and by the end of the movie, they'll actually be sitting at the Kumite watching Frank fight, which is honestly hilarious, but one of them is played by a very young Forrest Whitaker, so that was pretty cool. We see Frank arrive in Hong Kong, where he quickly befriends another American fighter who is there to also participate in the Kumite by the name of Ray Jackson. And this guy's just huge, he's super ripped, he's super jacked. And they're both met at a hotel by their guide by the name of Victor Lin.
Wow.
Victor guides them around Hong Kong and basically makes sure that they'll be able to participate in the Kumite.
Like put up your dukes, right?
He decides to take them to the location where they are holding the Kumite. And of course, this is none other than Kowloon, the walled city. And this is cool because these are actually real shots of Kowloon, the walled city, before it was demolished. So this was, I don't know, it was haunting, but it was also very awesome. So Victor guides Ray Jackson and Frank Dukes to the Kumite, where some of the officials question if Frank Dukes is actually part of the Tanaka clan, as, you know, Tanaka is a Japanese name and he is an American, so they're a little skeptical.
What does katana mean? It means Japanese sword.
So they say, you know what, you need to prove your worth, show us the dim mak, which I guess is like, you know, a death punch or a death move, so like any killing blow, basically. Frank Dukes then demonstrates his connection to the Tanaka ninja clan by performing the death touch. This is such a cool scene. One of the officials actually picks like the bottom brick on a pile of bricks, and the official says, you know what, I want you to break the bottom one using the death punch, and we see Frank Dukes, Jean-Claude Van Damme, just hiya! It's so badass, dude, but he freaking explodes the bottom brick. It's like, brother, it was a good scene. It's a good scene. We then go to the first day of the tournament, and we get some pretty awesome fight scenes. We see a couple of the different fighters, and there's some unique styles there. And for a late 80s movie, the choreography and you know, the stunts in this movie are actually pretty good. Like, there was really no complaints. We see Frank Dukes quickly earn himself, you know, like a target on his back, because he actually takes the world record in the Kumite for the fastest knockout, which used to belong to the previous champion, and the previous champion is there, and he saw that, and he does not like that. He does not like those vibes. Not good. He's like, hello. So, you know, there's that. We then see the military police officers arrive in Hong Kong, and, you know, they're attempting to track Frank Dukes down, and they're working with some of the local Chinese government to also, you know, kind of infiltrate the Kumite and, you know, apprehend Frank Dukes and take him back, because they don't want to be responsible for him, as he is, you know, like a U.S. military asset. They don't want anything to happen to him. It's also pretty irrelevant. We then arrive at the second day of the tournament, and again, we get some really awesome fight scenes. I mean, this really just jacks you up, and I can imagine, I mean, this movie came out before I was born, but I can imagine if you're watching this and you're like 10 years old, you're probably going ape berserk, you know, throwing your brother through the friggin' roof, you know, slamming him on your bed. You're probably hyped. Moving on the second day, we get some pretty amazing fight scenes, and we see that Ray Jackson is actually matched up against the former champion of the Kumite, whose name is Chong Li. They have a pretty quick little bout, and Jackson quickly gets the upper hand on him. However, he starts, you know, like trying to get the crowd on his side, and he begins to kind of, you know, show off and whatnot. So this gives Chong Li just enough time to recover and turn the fight around, and he like brutally beats him and puts him in the hospital, and he comes close to killing him. It's pretty insane stuff, you know. So Frank Dukes visits Jackson in the hospital. He kind of, you know, makes a promise to him that he's going to beat Chong Li and he's going to win the Kumite, and, you know, he's going to avenge him. So it's totally good, you know. We get a brief conversation between the reporter Janice Kent and Frank Dukes. She's basically telling him, please don't go back, to which Frank replies, you know what, don't you want to be the best reporter you can be? Isn't that why you're reporting on the Kumite? Well, it's the same for me. I want to win the Kumite because I want to be the best fighter that I can be. Let's go, brother. Let's go. It's pretty sick, you know, it's pretty sick. We see the military police officers arrive once more, and they track him down to one of the alleys in Kowloon City, where they have a brief chase, and Frank, you know, kind of outsmarts them, and he's honestly just too strong, too fast, too motivated to even be stopped.
I'm too strong! I'm too motivated!
So it's at this point where the military officers kind of just give up on chasing him, and they decide, you know what, if you agree to come back with us after the Kumite, we have no issues with you. On the final day of the Kumite tournament, we are treated to some amazing fight scenes once again, and we even see Chong Li defeat one of his opponents and actually murder him. And this is an underground illegal martial arts tournament, so anything goes. Either you knock out your opponent, you knock him out of the ring, or you kill him. So Chong Li decides, you know what, I've had it with this guy. He kills him, breaks his neck, and, you know, he just kills him right then and there. A lot of the crowd and even, you know, the officials of the Kumite are very disapproving of this, and they all turn their back on Chong Li and are, you know, kind of just disgraced by this. Like, there was no honor in killing that guy. He was already knocked out, so it was completely unnecessary. We then see that the final bout has come down to Frank Dukes and Chong Li. And Chong Li is a little So he decides, you know what, I'm probably going to lose against Frank Dukes. Let me, put some tricks up my sleeve. So he secretly sneaks in like a salt tablet inside his waistband of his pants and decides, you know what, if I can't beat Frank Dukes, I'm going to blind him and I'll beat him that way.
Nope.
So the final fight is between Frank Dukes and Chong Li, and we quickly see that Frank Dukes gets the upper hand on Chong Li, and it's looking like a certain victory for Frank. This is until Chong Li pulls out the salt tablet that he had snuck in his waistband, and he breaks it and blinds Frank by throwing all the salt in his eyes and in his face, and it's looking grim for Frank. It's pretty not good because obviously he can't see, and Chong Li is just beating him senseless at this point. It's at this point where Frank Dukes recalls his earlier training with his master Tanaka, and he clears his mind, and he gathers his ki. Even still today, this was a pretty awesome fight scene. So Frank Dukes is totally blinded, and he's just listening for the sounds, and he still manages to overcome the handicap. And in the end, he winds up defeating Chong Li, and he forces him to utter the phrase "Mate," which is basically "I surrender," which is amazing. He, instead of knocking him out or, knocking him out of the ring or even killing him, he just forces him into submission. It's incredible. And he becomes the first American and first Westerner, for that matter, to win the Kumite, which was awesome to see. It was so cool. And let me just say, Jean-Claude Van Damme is in like peak condition for this movie, bro. Like, if any of y'all have some fitness goals out there, look to this dude. The next day, we see that Frank Dukes has agreed to return to the United States with the military officers, Forrest Whitaker and his partner, and he says his goodbyes and farewells to Janice Kent and Ray Jackson, and he says, you know what, if you ever need me, they have the really classic 80s goodbye where they're like, you know what, brother, if you ever need me, call me, I'll be there. And they do like that really cool handshake stuff. And yeah, that's the end of the movie. Fade to black. Sha, 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 sha. The movie ends. So, was Bloodsport worth watching? 100% yes. This movie is kind of a cultural icon, and many say it's the pinnacle of all martial arts movies in the 80s, and I'd have to agree. I mean, even today, it's still probably one of the more entertaining martial art movies I've ever seen. Like, I mean, obviously there are better, given like camera quality is increased and et cetera, but for the time, this movie was over the top, super good. It spawned many sequels. It inspired Johnny Cage in Mortal Kombat, and it's, filmed in some really cool locations, and it was honestly pretty awesome to see Kowloon, the walled city. And again, you guys should just look that place up because it's pretty mind-blowing, but to see it in film was honestly a treat. It was honestly a treat. So I would say if you haven't seen this movie, you kind of owe it to yourself to at least give it a watch. It's free here on YouTube. It's an hour and a half long, and it was honestly entertaining from beginning to end. Alright, that wraps up this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate everybody who has supported me so far. We're at 120 subscribers and counting, so if you like movie breakdown stuff, consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And if you like this video, maybe hit the thumbs up button. I would really appreciate it. But either way, if you like this video, that's enough for me. Until next time, Kumite, Kumite.